Okay, in the third video in this set, I'm going to go through these, what do I got here? 8 arguments. So maybe you've already tried them. Let's see what we got. Okay, the first one, premise 1, Starkville is larger than Chicago. Premise 2, Chicago is larger than Tokyo. Therefore, Starkville is larger than Tokyo. Okay, so this is valid. If these two premises are true, then this conclusion has to be true. And I think we did one like this already. Any argument that turns on the larger than relation is going to be valid as long as everything's in the right order. So if A is larger than B and B is larger than C, then A has to be larger than C. Any argument with that form is going to be valid. Now you might notice, of course, that these two premises are false. Starkville, Mississippi is much smaller than Chicago, and Chicago is smaller than Tokyo. So the premises are false, but that doesn't matter for it being valid. For valid, of course, all we care about is if the premises are true, what does that mean for the conclusion? However, since you know the term, I'll just include that this argument is not sound. So valid but not sound. Okay, here, today is Saturday. That's our one premise. Therefore, today is Saturday or it is Sunday. Okay, that's valid. If this premise is true, maybe it is true while you're watching this video, then this sentence has to be true. If today is Saturday is true, then it has to be true that today is Saturday or today is Sunday is true. For me right now, working away on a Saturday, premise 1 is true, so this argument is also sound. If you're watching on some other day, then it would not be sound. Okay, now here, this next one, we have the same premise. Today is Saturday. Our conclusion is today is Saturday or there is a dragon on the moon. Okay, this is still valid. So if this premise, today is Saturday, is true, then this sentence, today is Saturday or there is a dragon on the moon, has to be true. That's just the nature of or. If this was an and, it would be a different story, but it's not. It's an or. So this argument is valid. And for me right now, today is Saturday, this is sound. Okay, so maybe sound, depending when you're watching this. Okay, this one here is a little tricky. So premise 1, Mississippi is east of the Mississippi River. Premise 2, part of Mississippi touches the Gulf of Mexico. Conclusion, therefore, Mississippi State is in Starkville. So you might notice that in this argument, we have 3 sentences that are all in fact true. Each of these, the 2 premises and the conclusion, are all true. However, this is not valid. And in fact, for this one, it might help you to look at those other 2 definitions of valid that are at the bottom of page 5. I'll just take the main definition we have, which is if the premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true. So if these 2 are true, then does this conclusion have to be true? Well, no. Premises 1 and 2 can be true, and Mississippi State could have been placed somewhere else. So this argument is not valid. All right, now these last 4, including that one there, you might notice all have the same first premise. If it is 9 a.m. on Monday, then Peter is in his office. So let me show you one thing. Actually, so this is the textbook for all X. And let's see. Chapter 5, logical operators. So here, page 41, although the actual page could change, but somewhere there's going to be a section titled conditional. Okay, so we will start with this sentence. If Jean is in Paris, then Jean is in France. Okay, and so you don't need to worry about it right now, although it will be on the first test. You're going to get into symbolizing sentences using letters like these. So sentence 23 has this form: if P, then F. And any sentence with this form is called a conditional. Okay, again, you don't have to worry about this right now, although you will get into it before test 1. We will use the arrow to symbolize the if-then. Thus, sentence 23 can be symbolized P arrow F. Okay, this is the important part. So in a conditional, what goes before the arrow is called the antecedent, and what comes after the arrow is called the consequent. So Jean is in Paris is the antecedent. Jean is in France is the consequent. Okay, so the antecedent and the consequent are the two parts of a conditional. So you'll notice, we'll just take these first two arguments. First, in the first argument, the second premise is the antecedent of the conditional, and the conclusion is the consequent. And then in the second one, the second premise is the consequent, and the conclusion is the antecedent. Okay, one more thing to mention about the conditional is that you can think of it as a rule. And it's a rule that says if the antecedent happens, then the consequent has to happen. Or in other words, if the first thing happens, then the second thing has to happen. Okay, well, so if this rule is in force and the antecedent has happened, then we know that the consequent has to have happened. Therefore, this argument is valid. Okay, now here we have the same rule. The rule is in force, but premise 2 tells us that Peter is in his office. And the conclusion is it's 9 a.m. on Monday. So you can probably see that even if these two premises are true, the conclusion doesn't have to be true. We can have our rule, Peter can be in his office, but it might not be 9 a.m. on Monday. It might be 2 p.m. on Wednesday or whatever. So this argument is invalid. Okay, now these final two are similar, except there's a not in both premise 2, both premise 2s, and in the conclusion. Okay, so for this one, the reasoning is actually pretty similar to what we just were thinking about for the previous one. So we have our rule. Premise 2 says it's not 9 a.m. on Monday. And the conclusion is, therefore, Peter is not in his office. Okay, so this is invalid because both of these premises can be true. Both of these premises can be true, and the conclusion can be false. We have our rule. It's not 9 a.m. on Monday. Peter might or might not be in his office. And so the conclusion doesn't have to be true. Okay, and then the last one. If it is 9 a.m. on Monday, then Peter is in his office. Peter is not in his office. Therefore, it is not 9 a.m. on Monday. Okay, so this one is valid. So our rule says that if it is 9 a.m. on Monday, then Peter has to be in his office. Since he's not in the office, it can't be 9 a.m. on Monday. If these two premises are true, then this conclusion has to be true. So that's valid. Okay, and there we go. Again, you should have an introduction to arguments printed out. You need to read it yourself. But if you have any questions, you can email me.